going to start with quite a big question for the panel, and I will ask each of you briefly in 2 or 3 minutes, because this is a large question, to touch on some of the trends that you've noticed in your respective regions over the last few years. And I'll start with you, Hemant, so I'll pass to you.
Thank you, Katie. So I think just a couple of things that, reflecting on what we heard across the last few sessions yesterday, US, Canada, UK, Australia are the big four in terms of destination markets, right? And we also kind of heard about the source markets, right? So the trends that we are seeing in US, China is beginning to soften a little bit, and this is across all geographies. There are other markets which will take up the slack, India being one of them. We're also seeing a lot of traffic coming in from Nigeria. And we heard people talking about how Nigeria is going to become even more important going forward. And we've started seeing some kind of signs of that. We are actually doing outreach activities in Nigeria to make sure that we are addressing that market. Moving on, I think US, apart from getting high quality talent, it has to also protect the access to top quality talent. So if US wants to continue to be at the cutting edge, it needs to access that talent, and that talent is coming in through external markets. Just a quick figure, by 2030, there will be a shortage of around 2.5 million STEM jobs in US. So they need to kind of protect access to that talent. So I think that's one. And quick one from an India source market, I think we heard Mr. Kohli talk about tier 3, tier 4 markets. We are seeing a trend there. Tier 1 markets have always been very strong for us, but we are also doing outreach in tier 2, tier 3 cities because we are seeing applications, traffic coming from those markets as well.
Hi, Katie. If we look at the Canada perspective, and of course, I think I would resonate with what Hemant said about China. Is because China is currently softening, and I think India is really taking on a much bigger role, and there's a lot of dependency on India really sourcing out good talent out there. Alongside with that, I would just like to, deviate the discussion towards immigration and part-time work options, because in Canada what we've really seen trending right now is how students are given the liberty to really work beyond their 20-hour limit, which I think is it is definitely showcasing that Canada as a country is, as traditionally it was, has a lot of labor shortage. And they are looking at the young generation, they're looking at international students, they're looking at young people coming into their country. And this has been very recent. Students are allowed to work more than 20 hours if they can balance their course study and work life. And that is, I think, very revolutionary for Canada. Yeah.
I think for UK, it's quite different in terms of universities. So I've worked for a modern university. Now I'm working for a Russell Group. So there's been a lot of difference there. For modern universities, I think in terms of regions, the markets are different. In terms of a Russell Group, we have a completely different market set. Even the recruitment strategy is quite different in terms of the fact that for a modern university, it's not only about the numbers. In fact, it's not even a number game anymore. It's more about compliance. It's more about quality. For a Russell Group, it's still a mixed bag. There's more focus on UG recruitment. Of course, now we are working on different regions. We're trying to develop the market more. So I think, yeah, there's a lot of difference. The popular subjects still remain business all across. And I think, again, that's one of the next things that we are looking to focus on to diversify in terms of subjects, the markets, all of that.
Thank you, Katie, for the question. And I'm going to say it with the perspective of Australia. So when you talk about trends, what we see changing hugely is the interest that Australian universities and institutions and country as a whole is showing in what India has to offer. And while it may have started with the diminishing interest from Chinese students, it has now taken its own space finally. When you talk about trends as a few of the people in the previous panel also outlined, undergraduate market is going to really, really come forward and take its place, because students now are more informed than ever. They don't want to be just counseled on what course. The kind of courses they're looking at is totally off the bat from the regular engineering or medicine. Yes, we do have those, but as far as trends go, it's off the charts. It's from music to psychology to architecture, you name it, and students are looking at those courses. But if anyone was to take notice of the trends, they should see that as a country, whether it's US, Canada, Australia, or UK, you have to give the due to the student who's coming there. If you don't, probably a repeat referral may not just come to that country or that university. So yeah.
Thank you all so much. I've had the privilege to talk to these panelists a few times, though not in person until this week, and we've talked at length about all of the topics we hope to cover today. And so for this next topic, we're going to move into some of the challenges that they face in their work with students. And I'd like to start with Anindita, because you've brought up some really great points here in our past discussions, but when you think about your direct work with students, what are some of the challenges you're seeing them face, and how do you think they can overcome those challenges?
To be very honest, I mean, yesterday really opened up a lot of information. I think we've heard from the very best. We've got so many different perspectives that I would like to slightly also just focus on the lack of information. I think there's a lot of importance being placed on STEM programs, and this is, I think, across all countries. And I think because students are prepared for their first job is something, you know, one of the speakers said yesterday, which is great. They are trained to actually get an education to just get into their first job. And there's a lot of lack of information as to the amount of career opportunities that are out there. I feel like being able to make this information available, and I'm sure that IC3 and there are so many other partners who are really working relentlessly. In fact, all of us ICRs, everybody's really putting in a lot of hard work to make information and career options available to students. But this is something that I find is challenging because there are so many interesting programs out there. Just to give you an example, so University of Ottawa is located at the capital of Canada. So there's a lot of scope with programs like, let's say, political sciences, international relations. You have all of your embassies there. You have a lot of NGOs out there. So there's definitely a lot of scope for students going into social sciences, but we tend to receive much more focus towards just STEM. I definitely interact with a lot of students that come into me saying that I would want to go for a program. Just tell me a program that'll get me the best job. Just tell me a program that has the best opportunity. And that's not the right approach. I think this is one of the biggest challenges that us as a system, or maybe this is what India has inherently, is just trying to get the best job. We are a service-oriented country, and that's what we have instilled in our kids. So maybe it's time to change that narrative.
I'll open it up to our other panelists if anyone wants to share. Go ahead.
I think speaking from a filter of a top business school, I think the challenges for us are, I mean, a lot of students self-select, but the challenges are around kind of funding because it's an expensive program. Students are thinking about ROI. Then the second thing which has come up in the recent years is visa processing. How do we kind of make it easier for them? How can the US consulate make it easier for students to travel? And they have been doing a brilliant job. Last year, they processed one of the highest number of US visas for fall students, for F1 students. The other thing is around outcomes. A lot of students from India, when they come into a top program, they are beginning to think about what's going to happen next. Will they get into consulting or investment banking? And one of the things we essentially tell them throughout the process is, what's your why? What's your purpose? Don't kind of go towards consulting or investment banking just because you think that's cool. Think about why you want to do that. Why are you getting into a top school like this? Really reflect on that before you kind of come in. So I would kind of say these are some of the patterns we are seeing.
Thanks, Katie. As challenges that we face, as a university, because we're one of the top-ranked universities from Australia, yes, we don't face that much challenge in terms of people wanting to look at us. But as Hemant pointed out rightly, why are you getting into the course, or why do you want to study at the university? The transition from an Indian education system to a foreign education system is a huge challenge which students need to be prepared of, and sometimes they're not able to transition that well. Apart from that, as a country, I think, and at the risk of sounding politically incorrect, I'm an Australian, but yes, I want to put it out there. We need to come together as a country, and a whole of country approach to India as a market needs to be more structured, which currently it's a bit fragmented. They're trying to bring it together, but I hope we'll get our act together a little faster. It'll only help because it's a wonderful country to study in, to live in, and to be in. So yes.
I would just like to quickly add, I'm sorry, but I think collectively as a group, we have a social responsibility, and this really goes out to the counselors, to the ICRs, to the agents who are sitting out here today, is to really not handhold the students anymore. I think that's one of the biggest problems, that the student, just while starting or beginning, at the beginning of their journey towards just trying to understand their options for international education, with something as simple as just writing an SOP. I think there's a lot of hand-holding that's done. There's a lot of ease that's been provided to these students. A lot of, absolutely hand-holding that's done. I think that needs to change collectively as an industry. I think agents can probably take a lot of responsibility on that forefront. We do know that in North India, it is very, very, it's a popular practice to actually get the entire setup ready for students when it comes to SOPs or applications. So I do also know students who probably don't even know their application number. So it's very frightening. So if a student is not really aware of why, where, what, the SOPs, the essays, they're bound to really fail, and the chain would never really break. So I think collectively, it is a social responsibility for us as well, if we want to change the narrative.
I think probably all of what they said, but other than that also, I feel we face capacity issues, which on one hand, we want the numbers, but then we don't have the capacity. So I think the moment you try concentrating on quality, you get a better pool of students, and you probably might not face the issue with capacity. So I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges that we're facing now. Also, when students move from traditional subjects, we know business, management, computing, but the moment they diversify, I think that the popular programs, of course, will do well, but the moment we diversify, we reach our number targets as well as quality.
Thank you all. I'm going to move us onto our next topic, our opportunities, which I know we have a lot to speak about based on past conversations, so I will open this up to all four of you, but in your work and in your respective territories, what are some of the opportunities you're seeing students identify, and what opportunities do you think they find are most important coming out of international education?
So again, speaking from a filter of a top US business school, I think the opportunities are immense. A lot of Indian students are happy taking on a lot of debt and then kind of studying in US and kind of exploring opportunities in the US, right? And they go on to do have very successful careers, kind of end up in amazing companies. Some of them come back to India as well in the future. In terms of specific opportunities that we are observing, and this is a couple of themes that we picked up yesterday. In India, there's such a huge demand. One model doesn't work. You can have campuses, you can have online, you can have digital, you can have hybrid, and students are looking at access to high quality education. Everyone won't have the access in terms of resources. Everyone can't travel to a top school outside of India. They need to be able to access high quality education in India itself. And we keep hearing about the demographic dividend that India is going to enjoy till 2070. That's brilliant. But you also kind of hear reports of surveys. A Bloomberg report came in recently where they said that Indian students saying that their degrees are not as useful as they thought they would be, right? So there's a gap here. How do we kind of create education which is not only high quality, but it's relevant to kind of take advantage of that? We heard speakers say about how we'll be providing the workforce, but are we kind of skilling up the workforce in the right way? And this is not only India, it's also overseas, because our students will be going outside and trying to work in different markets. That's already happening. The other opportunity is executive education, lifelong learning. That's a key area which will continue to expand. We have seen last few years, even before the pandemic, how tech companies are doing extremely well in this part of the world. A lot of unicorns have come up in the last few years. That will continue to happen. So we'll see universities looking at that opportunities across the world. So that will be one thing.
Just to add to what Hemant was saying, I think India being a very service-oriented country, there's really lack of the proper sort of corporate role, which students probably are able to pick up once they have an international education. So probably, let's say in a Canada or in a US, they would be able to join a company or the corporate workforce in leadership roles, versus if they were here in India, it would be probably more of an outsourced role or a process-based role. So I think that opportunity is immense. The kind of experience and exposure that a student is experiencing in their very early on years, right after their education, is invaluable. Also, along with that, I think the kind of alumni network that you create, that's massive. Yesterday again, I'm sorry, I'm just picking up so many points from all of our sessions from yesterday. I remember someone said that once you are with London Business School, you will be there, with them till you die. So the kind of alumni network that these students can create, and not just in one specific country, but globally. And when they grow up, when they're bigger contributors towards global development, imagine the kind of exposure that they can have, the kind of resources that they would be, they would probably have at the tip of their hands through their alumni network. I think that is massive. So this is one of the biggest opportunities, I feel. Yeah.
Okay, so just for Hemant and whatever the points that have been put forward, I think there are two sets here. One, we look at opportunities for students. The other, in sense, is we look at the opportunities for the universities or higher education institutions from outside who are looking at India or the larger market of South Asia. When we talk about, everyone here yesterday and today has spoken about transnational education. As someone who comes from my previous experience in an EdTech TNE organization, I understand that the Indian market has heard the word TNE, doesn't understand the whole concept of what TNE is and the benefit that it can bring. Because we as a society, as Indians, are very conservative, and we think anything done digitally or via distance education is not valuable enough or does not carry equal value. What needs to be done is organizations like Sannam or organizations which carry that respect and value can work towards creating awareness for TNE. So it is going to ultimately benefit the students, because as Hemant said, not everyone can reach the top higher education institution. Forget the top education institutions, everyone can't reach the top of their class. So what happens to the middle rung? Where do they go? Does it mean they don't need that education? They should still have access. At the same time, it's the opportunity for the higher education institutions to make use of technology and work towards creating more access. We talk about diversity and access a lot at University of Sydney. So access to the world to understand what is it that you have to offer. So partnering with institutions in countries like India or the South Asia market would benefit both the institutions and the students. So that's my take.
I appreciate you bringing up T&E, and I know something we talked about yesterday was also campus development in India, and so I'd love to continue that conversation and ask, how do you think the development of campuses in India will impact India's contribution to the international education sector?
I mean, just thinking about what Mr. Sanyal was saying yesterday, I mean, according to him, brick and mortar universities are dead. And for a minute I thought, okay, we might as well go home now, you know. But, you know, jokes aside, I think in India you have, like I said earlier, there's opportunity for multiple models, right? Campuses have a place. And for example, I mean, I'm just going to give a quick example of the case study method. I mean, we are, you know, the only school, two schools in North America, Harvard and Darden, which do case study method only. So the lecture, there's no question of a repetitive lecture, because every time you come into the classroom, it's a new experience. Students are different, the case study might be different, it cannot be replicated. So there's opportunity for a brick and mortar kind of campus. There's an opportunity for you to be in a class and engage with people of different kind of backgrounds and have a debate and challenge. And I would like to think Mr. Sanyal was thinking about YouTube as a metaphor for online and digital, because it would be really sad if you were sitting across a YouTube channel and trying to learn something. We have seen it before. I've been in EdTech before COVID started. We have been exploring online. There are opportunities and challenges, and you have to temper that. So I think there's opportunities there to create an environment where great minds can come together and learn. But given the ambitious targets all of us have in terms of India and the gross enrollment ratios that we are looking at, and like some people said yesterday, we can't build campuses fast enough. So different flavors for different one, but I think that model can coexist with others as well.
So yesterday, Mr. Chakravarti started up with his opening comments is that I wanted to pay for my tuition, but my college did not take any money from me. And so Indian education is very affordable, cheap, but in such a scenario, quality becomes a question. So I think with the entry of international universities, there is going to be very, very healthy competition, and local universities would be, I would be happy if they are forced to, you know, bring up their quality of education and offerings. I think that is definitely going to create some sort of a butterfly effect. And that is something that I feel is very interesting. And also, India being such a large nation, now that we're 1.4 billion with so many young individuals, I don't think that there would be a major shift of demand or supply or movement of students going abroad. I think India as a whole has a lot to offer. So this will just be another way, source where students would explore. So basically saying if campuses do come to India, it would not really affect the students wanting to get an international exposure. I would rather predict that students who already are looking for quality education here in India would just have more options. So overall, uplifting the educational system altogether, and with the advent of NEP, I think in the next 10 years there would be interesting things happening in education, and we'd be witness to it.
I think I pretty much agree with a lot of what Hemant and Anindita said, that I don't think that students going out of India would really change. I think it's probably going to widen the pool. And a lot of students who might not have been able to afford going to the UK might still have access to quality education. Also, the fact that India might become a viable option for students from other countries who might not be able to go to the UK but might want top quality education, they might want to come to India. So I think that's another opportunity that that we've opened ourselves up to.
While pretty much everything has been covered by the three panelists, I think for the benefit of all the higher education institutional representatives from outside who are listening to all this very eagerly, what needs to be examined is how the government of India is pushing the whole strategy of bringing knowledge back and then being the knowledge center of the world again, much as we were during historical times. But what needs to be done again is examine how the institute that is planning to either set up a base here or a brick and mortar building here, what is it that they want to derive? Are they going to make it a center where everyone from the regional Asian countries can come and study the same quality of education that they look for in a university from, say, UK, Canada, US, or Australia? Apart from this, how is it, is the strategy only on numbers, or is the strategy on expansion? Is the strategy on diversity in other markets? So it's going to be a very tricky question, and they have to balance their scales. But yes, at the Indian government's front, they're pushing it, they're creating zones for it. What needs to be understood is that the government needs to keep a plan where this continues and is not a stopgap or for some time kind of arrangement. So it's, personally from my university, where we have a wait and watch, we're going to wait and see how it goes and then take a call. So, but there's a lot that goes on behind this.
Thank you so much, and I'm sure you can tell by their wonderful insights so far. Many of our panelists have personal ties and experiences in international education themselves. And so, Anjalii, I'd actually like to start with you for this next question, but given your personal ties to international education, how would you describe the importance of becoming a global citizen through international education?
I'm biased, and rightly so. I belong to both the countries that I work in and I work for. So, and my daughter is studying at University of Sydney as well. So when we talk about being global citizens, and this is something I've spoken to students in my roles as a counselor or in EdTech, or when I was, as an agent as well. We have to be very honest. The kind of exposure that students get here in India, even while they're in college, is very, very limited. When you go and start your education outside, it is such a vast difference from how a student lives their life in India. And I talk to students when they ask me, what are the job prospects? When I go to Australia after I complete my degree, I say, when you're getting an education from a world-ranked institution, you should not look at just that country being the place where you seek a job. You're gaining experience with your peers, with your friends in the class who come from maybe 100 different nationalities, and how life is and how work is in those nationalities makes such a huge impact. You learn just by talking, just by observing, and not just by traveling to the country. The depth of experience, the interactions, the fact that you have to be on your own and live life without the protection of family and parents around you, the fact that you get to interact with economies, the fact that you get to interact with organizations which work with that university or institution that you're studying at, it's such a huge impact on becoming a global citizen. I've seen so many students who've studied in Germany that I've sent, and they work in China and they work in Switzerland, and the world becomes your place, your horizon expands.
Yeah, I think, as I completely agree with her, when a student goes out to study, they become independent. They they are on their own. So a lot of that, they have to change a lot of things about themselves. Again, because they interact with people from different walks of life, I think unknowingly sometimes these things just seep into you. You start changing your outlook towards things. And I think that really, really helps later on in life.
Okay, taking a step back, I mean, as Indian managers and leaders, we are hardwired to handle ambiguity and uncertainty and we are able to adapt very quickly. And you see that reflected in some of the leaders across the world of tech companies. They are all of Indian origin who have kind of studied abroad and then taken on leadership positions across the world, right? And you also see a lot of academic deans and senior faculty of Indian origin kind of at different schools and universities, right? Now, so the opportunity is like in terms of global citizenships, any business is global now. So you need to have those skills to be able to operate in any market outside. Just a quick filter on startups, right? India is one of the largest or third largest startup ecosystem in the world, second fastest growing. These startups models will replicate in different markets as well. What we are doing in terms of fintech is unparalleled. Other countries will start looking at that. So you will have more Indian managers who are going to be, or Indian leaders operating out of different markets. And this education, this exposure to a very diverse set of people working in multi-geographies, multi-demographic kind of teams becomes very critical. So I think this education, this exposure really helps them operate at that level and contribute in any kind of environment they work. And one quick last comment, like for example, when students come in, we say that we are teaching you, giving you the skills so that you can operate anywhere in the world. If you were asked to set up a company or think of a market entry strategy for Africa or Asia or Latin America for your brand or your business, you should be able to do that.
Also, social representation. I think the students that do study abroad are ambassadors for India. And a lot has changed when it comes to countries, how they look at India right now. And it is definitely because of our students, because of all the globalization that's happening, of all the movement around. Just a quick example of what international education can really do. And I would like to make an example of somebody sitting in the audience, Mr. Sohail Agbotwala, with whom I had the pleasure to work for multiple years. He went to a US university, Troy University, I think 35 years ago as an international student. And today he is the vice chancellor of that university. And I think there is, and he's sitting right there, so. So I think, and a public university though. This is remarkable of what international education, if done right, can do. If the opportunities that you actually get are massive. It's just, if it has to be done right. You can't really lock yourself up with your own community. You need to explore other communities as well. You have to open up. You can't go to a US and live in a mini Gujarat, or live in a mini Punjab when you're in Canada. You have to explore, you have to go around, and it's just going to get better.
Just wanted to quickly add the element around demographic dividend, and someone kind of made that comment yesterday that Indian workforces, Indian people from India will be a big part of the workforces across the world because populations in different countries are aging, declining even, and you will need high quality kind of workforces. So that also is an advantage for us. And we are thinking about how do we make them global citizens so that they can work in Europe, Latin America, North America, Asia, EMEA, wherever.
Thank you all. I think I hear some music playing, so I will start to wrap us up. But thank you all for sharing your insights, and I feel so lucky that we were able to have a group of panelists come together that represent so many regions that we do work in here at Acumen. So thank you all, and I'd like to invite all of you to put your hands together and thank our panelists for sharing those.